Danzo Shimura walked calmly into his office. Only after dismissing all but his old root agents did he allow his shoulders to sag and bury his face into his hands. He had acquired even more bandages in these last few weeks. After losing their Jinchuriki, Danzo had seen no other option than to take the field himself. Morale was alarmingly low in Konoha, and Danzo wasn't popular, so it was imperative that their ninjas saw that their Hokage was fighting and bleeding alongside them. Danzo didn't like it. If he died in battle, which was always a possibility, who could replace him? What if there was an attack on the Leaf Village while he was out in the field? He couldn't be everywhere at once. He used body doubles in order to make sure the enemy couldn't know when he was and wasn't in the village, but even that was a chancy gamble. And besides all that, leaving the Leaf Village risked the possibilities of conspiracies in his own village. He wasn't popular, and there was that old saying about rats dancing when the cat was away. And even with all that, with Danzo risking himself as much as he dared, it was still all they could do to hold the line. He had done the calculations before the war, and they were favorable. He never would have started this otherwise. But Uzumaki had ruined all of that. Danzo never thought her capable of such treason. But Danzo figured it was always his greatest weakness, assuming other people took their duties and responsibilities as seriously as he did. He wondered who had put these evil notions into her head. Hatake Kakashi, whom Danzo had tried to recruit long ago, and had mistrusted him ever since. Jiraiya, who had nearly been the antithesis of Danzo's own philosophy. Or Sakura Haruno, who had never had the stomach to do what needed to be done, and so should never have become a ninja in the first place. Danzo allowed himself a vindictive fantasy of what could have been if he had been given full control over both girls' training from the start, and if he had done something similar to what he'd done with Sai and his brother. If Uzumaki had killed Haruno, that surely would have broken her out of whatever madness possessed her now. But these were useless idle fantasies. He had to attend to reality. Reality knocked on the door, and Danzo invited his old council members inside. They had demanded to discuss the current state of the Leaf Village and the war with him. Koharu and Amora took a seat opposite of him. "We are glad to see you are well," Koharu said. Danzo nodded his thanks, though he didn't feel well. He felt incredibly tired and all he wanted to do was sleep. But he had to put up a show of strength to everyone. Especially these two. "I am busy, so please skip to the important bits," Danzo asked. "Very well. How do you see this war going, Lord Hokage?" Amora asked. "You've read the reports. We're holding on still," Danzo said. "Yes, you're making the best of a bad situation. That you're personally leading our ninjas despite your age is admirable, and no doubt why things aren't worse." "Yes, I know that. Spare me the flattery. You only did that to Hiruzen when you were about to follow it up with something unpleasant." "Very well. You're holding on right now, but that won't last. You're losing men, both to battle and to desertion. Your reign has seen more of our people go missing ninja than ever before." "That's as much a daimyo's fault as mine, as well as Uzumaki's and her ilk." "Yes, but whose fault is it that the daimyo is undermining us?" Koharu said. And Hamura followed it up by saying, "Besides the war, you are failing in your other duties. We heard about the fire temple being attacked. It was the Akatsuki, yet you've ignored this. Yes, we no longer have a Jinchuriki to protect from them, but if they cause havoc within our borders, it is still our responsibilities to stop them." "We don't have the resources to spare," Danzo said. There were precious few of their ninjas that he could trust against something like the Akatsuki, and none of them he could spare. Side note, Asuma also heard about this and he really wanted to go confront them, as he did kill one of his friends, Shiruku, but he just couldn't abandon his post right now, so Hiden and Kakazu have gone unchallenged so far. "We know. We sympathize with your position, but this cannot go on. The war must end, and we must put Fire Country and the Leaf Village to rights. We must restore the faith of our shinobi, lest we lose everything. I'm always open to suggestions, Danzo said. Koharu and Homura exchanged uneasy looks, and Danzo got the feeling he wasn't going to like this. We believe it's best that you step down as Hokage, they said. Danzo felt dizzy, though he did his best not to show it. Yet they knew him well enough to know how much this would bother him. It is a distasteful thing, but you claim to always do what is best for Konoha. I hope that desire is stronger than your pride. My pride means nothing, Danzo spat. I've always done my duty. If by my sacrifice I could protect Konoha, I would. You know that. Yet how would this help? Who could replace me, I ask you? We believe we should send a message to Naruto Uzumaki. Invite her back to take the position of 6th Hokage. That suggestion was so ludicrous it took Danzo a few seconds to register it. A traitor, Danzo said. Madness. Officially not a traitor, according to the Fire Lord. But we understand how crazy this must sound. Her behavior has been appalling, and she has another reason why we are in such dire straits. Rewarding her for all the trouble she has caused leaves a bad taste in our mouths, Homura said. But we must think logically. She has the raw power to demand respect. She's got the pedigree. We'd get our Jinchuriki back. And most importantly, she commands the loyalty of most of the ninjas that we have lost to desertion. Not to mention that we'd also regain the copy ninja and Tsunade's apprentices. By inviting her back, we stand to regain much of what we have lost. We do not trust her, the other advisor continued. But if she comes back, we can negotiate an end to the war with the other nations from a position of strength. Better this than the slow death we are facing now. We could place restrictions on the post of Hokage, limiting her power and the damage her naivety and inexperience could do. But we must have her back. Her, and all those who have chosen to follow her. Danzo would have destroyed Naruto and her budding organization of outlaws. But again, he simply lacked the resources. Everything was tied up keeping their enemies at bay. Assassins had been sent, but as it turned out, she wasn't wholly incompetent. Or the people surrounding her weren't. The food was watched closely for any signs of tampering. Guards kept watch while she slept. And usually an assassin's bad intentions were discovered and he was soon expelled. Expelled, not killed. This new faction seemed averse to killing, even their enemies. We are sorry it has come to this, Homura said. We tell you this with a heavy heart. Danzo wondered if this had been Naruto Uzumaki's plan all along. His report said the girl used to have aspirations of becoming the Hokage someday. It did make sense. He could see it now, and could almost admire her underhanded tactics if it didn't come at the expense of Konoha. Danzo wasn't a man for great emotions. Emotions were a weakness. Love, hate, pride, shame, all useless. He hadn't even truly hated the Uchiha clan, despite what some may think. They had been a threat to the village, and he had removed them, plain and simple. Yet at this moment, Danzo realized he truly hated Naruto Uzumaki, threatening the safety of Konoha all for the sake of her own ambitions. And to let a person like that become Hokage? It was unthinkable. Thank you for your counsel, but things aren't as desperate as they seem. By their looks, it was clear the elders didn't believe him. There are plans in motion, plans I haven't shared with you. Plans I still need to think of. Then share them now, they insisted. If these plans are discovered, it is important that you two can deny involvement, Danzo said. A familiar excuse that they should buy. We won't wait forever, Danzo. The longer this goes on, the worse off we'll be, and the harsher the peace terms, even if we get Uzumaki back. They left after that. Danzo spent several minutes desperately trying to think of a way to get out of the corner he had been driven into. Sometime later, he was staring at a large scroll on his desk. "Lord Tobirama, in your great wisdom, did you foresee even this?" he thought to himself. Back to Sasuke's side of the story. In the last part, I effectively did a small time skip for Naruto's group, so everything that happens with Sasuke here happens at the start of that. With Orochimaru dead, it's time for Sasuke to begin his final preparations for his fight against Itachi. He'd still want a squad to help him, since while Sasuke planned to fight Itachi one-on-one, he believed he needed help to ensure none of the other Akatsuki members butted in on his fight. So he's definitely still freeing Suigetsu. Even if Sasuke wouldn't want his help, which he does, he'd probably still want to free him, as he did free all of the prisoners when he went to get Karin as well. In canon, it was clear Suigetsu at least knew of Sasuke and that they had spoken before. And if Suigetsu knew Sasuke, he'd likely also know of Hinata in this scenario. Suigetsu's opinion of Hinata is probably that she's a bit of a wuss, with her desire to leave the ninja life behind and with her soft-spoken mannerisms. But he also thinks she's a decent traveling companion. A wuss, but a decent person. Like I said, he knows of both of them, but not well. Suigetsu joins the party, probably making some joke about being a third wheel, because oh yes, he knows what's going on between his traveling companions. He, of course, can't go get the Executioner's Blade, since it's currently still in the hands of Zabuza, who survived the Wave Arc and is currently the Mizukage. This would make Suigetsu even more eager to join up with Sasuke, since he wants to kill Kisame and take Samhara for himself even more now, since, well, he doesn't already have a cool sword. For right now, he probably just has to take a regular sword from the armory. Decent quality, like what Sasuke uses, but nothing worthy of having its own name. Now, canonically, Sasuke goes to recruit Karin next, but that can't happen here since she's already dead. I don't blame you if you don't remember, but I mentioned all the way back in part 19 that Karin died in the Forest of Death. To recap and explain, the alternate Team 7 of Hinata, Shikamaru and Sasuke defeated the Rain Genin before even meeting up with Orochimaru. So after Sasuke defeated the Sound Team after Orochimaru, they then had 2 scrolls and could go finish the second part of the exam. This was terrible news for Karin, since we know Sasuke saved Karin when he was looking for another scroll. Since no new scroll was required, Sasuke wasn't looking for one, and so Karin dies to the bear. And as an aside, Karin's duties in Orochimaru's organization were probably given, at least in part, to Hinata in this situation. They were mostly research and administrative tasks, so that kinda fits. And Hinata is the combat medic of the group anyway, so there really was no need for Karin in the first place. Sasuke still probably goes to where Karin would have been, just so he can set all the prisoners free. Because Sasuke is actually a pretty decent dude. Hell, even canon Sasuke was a very decent dude at this point in time. Freeing prisoners, instructing his group to use non-lethal force against Orochimaru's curse mark experiments. Until Itachi, canon Sasuke never actually killed anyone as far as I can recall. Not even when Orochimaru urged him to. But on the other hand, he did seem like he was about to kill Team 7 before Orochimaru stopped him. So I guess a bit of a mixed message? Whatever, moving on. So Karin can join them, and Jugo actually won't either. Why? Well, if you recall, in canon, Jugo followed Sasuke since he considered him Kimimaru's heir or something. But in this scenario, if you recall, Sasuke actually killed Kimimaru himself. Sasuke killed Jugo's most precious person, and Sasuke isn't the type to lie about something like this. I don't think Jugo is going to let that go. When they meet Jugo, he would try, and fail, to kill Sasuke. After Sasuke has beaten him up, Suigetsu would say, "We should just kill him. We can't release him into the world like this," Hinata would say, and so implicitly support the idea of killing him. Leaving him in this prison alone, which will soon be abandoned, is a slow death. Releasing him means death for the innocents that will get caught in his wake when he's rampaging, so outright killing him would logically be the best choice. Also, Jugo hasn't done himself any favor in Hinata's eyes by trying to kill Sasuke. We're not killing him, Sasuke says. But he himself is actually not sure what to do here. He prods the injured Jugo with his foot. "You're still conscious?" A hateful glare is his answer. "Your transformation is a bastardization of Sage transformation. If you would master your curse, you need to be able to control Senjutsu. I'll give you the directions to Ryuchi Cave. Find the White Snake Sage. You'll likely fail and die, but it is your best hope." "If I live," Jugo says, still lying on the ground, staring up at Sasuke, "I'll kill you. I am the last person to discourage someone from seeking revenge. When you are ready, I will be waiting for you." And with that, Sasuke turns and walks out of the research and containment facility, so we get to Hinata trailing behind him, the latter being very upset. She was hoping for a nice, quiet life with Sasuke after this. Him encouraging powerful Senjutsu mutants to make killing him their life's goal was not in line with that. Now, without Jugo, Sasuke still doesn't have a full team. There are lines in canon that imply there are plenty of strong people in Orochimaru's organization that he could recruit, but we don't actually know of many. There is Gurren from an anime filler arc, the one with the crystal release. That filler arc takes place after the canonical Hidan and Kakuzu arc, and right before the arc with the Itachi fight. With Orochimaru dying sooner, Gurren would never be given the mission to go catch the Free Tails. Gurren is powerful, so Sasuke would probably go to her next. Except she's not going to join him either. Gurren was one of those who was legitimately loyal to Orochimaru. Like, very near Kimimaro levels of loyal. And killing Orochimaru wouldn't have made Sasuke popular in her eyes. Sasuke would have had better luck recruiting Kabuto than Gurren. Yes, Gurren eventually grows beyond her loyalty to Orochimaru in the filler arc, but that hasn't happened in this scenario. So Gurren is a no-go. So after failing to recruit both Jugo and Gurren, who's next? Well, Sasuke did part with his leave-getting classmates on good terms, but he doesn't want to force those in Konoha to choose between him and their loyalty to the village. That's kind of a nasty dilemma to put towards people you care about. As for Naruto and her group, assuming Sasuke has even heard about them already, since they are still a very new organization at this point, they are simply too busy, as I hopefully illustrated last chapter. After all that, who does Sasuke try to recruit? Okay, so I actually considered Isarabi, who is a filler character from that long stretch of 80-something episodes after the Sasuke retrieval arc. I even had some decent ideas to justify it. But it would still really be reaching, and honestly it would be one small step away from introducing an OC, which I'm always hesitant about doing. So honestly, and while Sasuke isn't happy about it, his team will be one member short. It's just him, Hinata, and third wheel Suigetsu. What happens next is that Sasuke's new team starts to investigate the Akatsuki some more, using the information they got from Sasori. They go looking for some of their informants. And oh yeah, they do dispose of Sasori after they extracted all the useful intel from him. Sasuke and his associates, as a whole, are a lot more ruthless than Naruto and her cohorts by comparison. So in order to investigate quickly, they do split up. That did also happen in canon. What is going to be different is that when Sasuke is poking around some old Akatsuki contacts, instead of finding some underworld contacts, he finds Itachi himself, lounging in a couch. Sasuke was briefly frozen when he saw him. "You should know, I'm just a shadow clone. Destroying me will serve no purpose." "I have nothing to say to a dead man," Sasuke said. "But you'll listen. You've been poking around, Sasuke, trying so hard to find me. I thought I'd save you the trouble. You may consider this a challenge." That got his attention. Where and when? Itachi didn't respond immediately, and just observed Sasuke. "You've changed, little brother. I've become stronger, strong enough to kill you." "No, I once told you to nurture your hatred. It is the only way you stand a chance against me. You have failed to do this. I hate you plenty. Liar. You don't look at me as if I'm an object of hatred. You look at me as if I'm sure you want to get behind you. Quite frankly, it's a bit insulting. As Itachi said it, Sasuke realized it was true. He had started to look forward to life after Itachi. Years ago, he felt like he couldn't afford to, and also had very little reason to. Hinata had changed that. Regardless, Sasuke figured anything that annoyed Itachi was a good thing. I guess you're right. You're just an obligation to me, Itachi. And after you're buried, I will never again spare you another thought. Itachi sighed in disappointment. You won't be a decent challenge with such half-hearted resolve, little brother. I know you've also failed to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan. I will not dance to your tune, Itachi. Won't you? Itachi said, showing a small mocking smile. Since you lack sufficient motivation, I've decided to help. Sasuke felt a chill. What did you do? I think you already know. The abandoned Uchiha hideout in the Land of Fire. Don't keep me waiting. The Itachi clone then exploded, but Sasuke was already racing out of the door by the time it did. Sasuke headed in the direction he knew Hinata had gone. He couldn't find her. There was no sign of a struggle, but Sasuke had expected there would be. Hinata wouldn't have been able to put up any sort of fight against someone like this. Sasuke didn't have the time for subtlety, and launched fireballs into the air to draw Suigetsu's attention. It was quicker than looking for the man. I thought we were trying not to be noticed, Suigetsu grumbled. Itachi has Hinata. Suigetsu smirked. Shouldn't have brought her with you, man. She's too weak. Sasuke's Sharingan activated and he glared at Suigetsu, who gulped nervously, but was either too brave or too stupid to keep his mouth shut. You're about to do something stupid, aren't you? I'm going to face him, no more delays. You just make sure it stays a one-on-one. And if I don't return, warn everyone who will listen that I failed. Understood, Suigetsu said, and he headed off. In the Uchiha hideout, Itachi was waiting for Sasuke. Hinata was standing next to the chair he was sitting in, completely hypnotized. Itachi had interrogated Hinata, and he wasn't pleased by what he had discovered. You see, Itachi had a plan. Sasuke was to kill him, and then he would return to Konoha, a hero, and restore the honor of the Uchiha clan. With Konoha's Jinchuriki having turned traitor, Konoha would need Sasuke especially. When Sasuke had left Orochimaru, Itachi had been glad he still had bonds in the Leaf Village. That meant that after Sasuke had avenged his family, he'd naturally return to the Leaf Village. However, Hinata Hyuga was standing in the way of his plan. While nothing had been spoken out loud between her and his brother, there was an understanding that after Itachi was dead, Sasuke would spirit Hinata far away, probably get married and start a family. While Itachi would normally be glad about that last part, the problem was that he planned to do this far away from Konoha. Itachi had sacrificed too much for Konoha and his brother to see the latter abandon the former for the sake of a pretty face. He would not allow Sasuke to be seduced away from the path of righteousness. Itachi's crows warned him of Sasuke's arrival. Through the crows, Itachi nearly put Sasuke under a genjutsu almost by reflex, but ultimately decided against it. This had to be real. Sasuke appeared before Itachi's throne. He had come quickly, but thankfully he hadn't been so stupid as to exhaust himself sprinting all the way here. Itachi might have just died from disappointment if he had done that. Itachi, I've come to make an end as per your charge, Sasuke said. Itachi could tell he wanted to say more, but feared it would be unwise. I suppose you'll want me to release her before we start. Sasuke didn't answer, probably thinking that if he said he wanted Hinata freed, Itachi would deny it out of spite. Tell me, Sasuke, how much do you know about the Mangekyo Sharingan? I know enough, Sasuke said, and Itachi explained how a user of the Mangekyo Sharingan gradually lost their sight. Sasuke clearly wasn't interested and nearly moved to attack, but Itachi held a kunai to Hinata's throat, and that was enough to stop him. Itachi continued explaining how Madara Uchiha had discovered a way to regain his light by taking the Mangekyo Sharingan from his brother. So that is why you spared me. Indeed. But you have failed me, Sasuke. You have not unlocked the Mangekyo. Nor will I ever. I'm not a monster, Itachi. Itachi chuckled. I lied to you before. Or rather, he has since learned better. I told you that you needed to kill your most precious person in order to unlock the Mangekyo. But I now suspect simply witnessing it will suffice. A few things happened in quick succession. Sasuke's eyes widened in realization. Itachi released Hinata from the genjutsu. She saw Sasuke, and relief filled her. Whatever else, she associated seeing him with safety. Sasuke, she whispered, and then she felt something cold and sharp across her throat. She was falling, warm liquid at her breast and shoulders. She heard Sasuke scream filled with such rage it barely sounded human. He tackled against Itachi and his sword was pressing against Itachi's kunai. Itachi smiled as he saw Sasuke's newly awakened Mangekyo Sharingan. Rejoice, little brother. You finally hate me enough. The fighting continued, but Hinata didn't have any attention to spare on it. She was fatally injured, but not dead yet. For 2 years, she had focused on medical ninjutsu, and she knew a slit throat was something that could, theoretically, be treated if an exceptionally competent medic could get there within seconds. Sasuke had often criticized her choice of focusing so much on the healing arts, to the detriment of her martial skills. Yet those skills were her only hope right now. Orochimaru hadn't been kind to his test subjects. Hinata had done her best to save as many of those as she could, so she had plenty of experience working on wounds that most would consider indisputably fatal. Still bleeding from her throat, Hinata activated her Byakugan. Her eyes offered near 360 degrees X-ray vision, so it could also be used to look at your own internal organs. Her artery had been cut, and she'd soon lose consciousness from her brain lacking blood. Her hands already felt weak, but she got them to her throat and under her open flesh. She grabbed her own severed arteries between her fingers and held them back together. She used pure chakra manipulation, another one of her talents as a Hyuga, to keep them together and prevent more of her blood from spilling that way. Between her fingers, she felt her own blood pulse in her artery with the beating of her heart, pushing it towards her brain. She had felt her own consciousness slipping, but with the new blood came new clarity, and with clarity came pain. She had survived the first few seconds. Next problem, she was drowning. Drowning in her own blood that had gotten into her windpipe. Itachi's kunai had severed more than just her artery. If one had ample warning and took a deep breath, a normal person could go without oxygen for 2 minutes. A ninja could hold out for much longer. But Hinata hadn't been prepared and suspected she had less than a minute. Removing blood from lungs was a comparatively easy task comparing to operating on her own arteries. Except she couldn't divert any attention to new problems while she needed physical and mental focus to keep her arteries together and not lose too much more blood. Her artery wasn't healed, just physically forced to connect. Hinata could rapidly increase the growth of new tissue, but it was always tender at the start, and arteries were under a lot of pressure from the blood. She couldn't fix this in the seconds she had. She had to find a quick fix to stitch her blood vessel back together. Improvising, Hinata severed a long stretch of her own hair. Human hair was very easy to manipulate, as Naruto had proved. Sharpening it with chakra also wasn't hard. The hard part was stitching her arteries back together with her trembling fingers. She feared it wouldn't be enough. She needed something more to glue it all together. The best glue she had at the moment was her own blood. Within half a minute it should start clothing. If she lent a helping hand with her chakra, it might be enough to give her the time she needed. She had no shortage of blood to work with. Her blood was in a pool all around her. She kept a close eye on the glued together artery as she needed to act quickly if it leaked again, but now she needed air. desperately, and she was in more pain than she had ever known prior. So much pain that the thought that it would all be over soon if she just stopped fighting was a tempting one. Hinata was no warrior, but she was still a fighter, and so she continued fighting for her life. She held a trembling hand over her chest, above her lungs, and slowly began extracting blood, guiding it with her chakra. Eventually, she was able to take a breath. The scary part of it was that the air didn't come through her mouth or nose, but the cut Itachi had made in her windpipe. If she somehow survived this day, the feat of just keeping herself alive would rival anything Tsunade ever did when it came to the healing arts. Hinata allowed herself to spare a moment to check up on Sasuke. He had noticed she was still struggling to survive and was trying to reach her. Itachi wasn't letting him. I am a naive fool, Sasuke was thinking to himself. He had known letting anyone get close to him was risky. He had known Itachi might just kill them out of spite. He had known. But the desire to not be alone had been too great. And now Hinata was paying the price for his folly. In the first few moments of the fight, Sasuke had rushed at Itachi like a man possessed. He figured it was a small miracle he hadn't died for that foolishness. Yes, whatever had happened to his eyes had somehow made him stronger. Combined with the curse mark and the chakra he had absorbed from Orochimaru, Sasuke was far stronger than he ever remembered being. He could tell that in terms of raw physical abilities he had surpassed Itachi. None of that would matter if he kept fighting like a berserker, however. He had calmed down soon enough. The feeling of rage, loss and shame and despair were still inside him, but he had forced them to the back of his mind. He needed cold focus to have a chance in this fight. Itachi would die, Sasuke vowed. He had vowed that many times over his life, but now he felt he had the power needed to see it through. Remember, this is Mangekyo Sharingan Sasuke, someone who seems to get stronger the more pissed off he gets. But this Sasuke also still has the curse mark in Orochimaru's chakra, which I've heard people say is like a 10 times multiplier or something. So this is a version of Sasuke that never really existed in canon. Itachi glanced at Hinata, who was still struggling to stay alive. Sasuke saw the buildup of chakra and knew what would come next. No! Sasuke screamed, and instincts he hadn't known he possessed flared to life. His left Mangekyo activated and stopped the black flames that were rushing to consume Hinata in their tracks. For those who have forgotten, Sasuke's right eye can create Amaterasu flames and his left eye can control them. Sasuke tried to send the flames back at Itachi, though it took him a practically long time, as he was still new to this. Pain exploded from Sasuke's side as he was sent flying. His vision wavered as the black flames disappeared. An illusion, Sasuke realized. Sasuke had crashed through the walls and Itachi had followed him outside. That was a relief, as that meant he wasn't using the opportunity to finish off Hinata. How she was even still alive at this point after having her throat slit, Sasuke had no clue. Sasuke decided to focus more on his eyes after that. He wasn't confident enough in his genjutsu to try and place Itachi in one, but he was more trying to avoid it being done to him. He could tell his visual prowess had gotten stronger, which would help with that. Itachi sent a blast of fire at Sasuke, who countered it with the same. Itachi then upped the ante by using the Amaterasu, and before Sasuke was overwhelmed, he figured out how to do the same. Itachi found his Amaterasu gradually being overwhelmed. Itachi was pleased by this. It seems he wouldn't need to pretend very hard to lose this fight. In fact, he wasn't sure he could win even if he was trying to, given how ill he was. Sasuke had finally reached a level of strength Itachi was happy with. It should be enough for his brother to face whatever challenges life threw at him. It would be a great boom to Konoha, and if it somehow still wasn't enough, Sasuke now knew how to unlock the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi only regretted he wouldn't live to see that. Itachi could be trying harder to finish off Hinata, but for one, he already didn't think she'd survive. And two, he had prepared contingencies before the fight just in case Sasuke did successfully retrieve her before he slit her throat. With Itachi being so hard pressed, he was forced to summon his own Susanoo to protect himself well before Sasuke was out of chakra, or even used Karin. Itachi swung the Totsuka blade at Sasuke, who was scrambling to dodge and was nearly blown away just from the displacement of air from the swinging blade. If you want an idea of how that looks like, here is a clip from Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm where Sasuke actually fights the Susanoo instead of instantly losing to it. Sasuke had a vague idea of what this was, since having a Mangekyo himself gave him instincts about all the stuff it was capable of. But he still approached this with caution. He probes the Susanoo's defenses and sees that nothing he does can do anything against the shield that this thing carries. It is a unidirectional shield though. Enough firestyle has been flying around that all the setup is in place for the use of the Karin. Sasuke hopes that it might be enough to smash through the shield, as this was his strongest attack, but he wasn't going to risk everything on it. As Karin comes crashing down, Sasuke also charges at Itachi's Susanoo. If Itachi couldn't stop the Karin, Sasuke would be caught in the blast radius and probably die as well. It wasn't like Sasuke wanted to die, but he needed to make sure that this worked, because he didn't think he'd get another chance if it didn't. Fortunately for Sasuke, Itachi can defend against Karin with the Yaramir. But as it's raised above him, it's not in place to stop Sasuke himself. And the Totsuka blade, which is the size of a small skyscraper, isn't exactly well suited to the close quarters that Sasuke had reached. With his Chidori, Sasuke tries and actually succeeds in drilling his way through the exoskeleton. Pain filled Itachi's world as he was engulfed by lightning, causing the Susanoo to disappear. Through the pain, Itachi still manages to hurl Sasuke away from him, but the damage was done. The Chidori had pierced one of his shoulders and one of his arms was now unusable. As Sasuke came at him again to finish the job, Itachi tries to summon it again, but it flickered in and out of existence. He just didn't have the energy anymore, and he could barely even see Sasuke's silhouette. His eyesight was all but gone. Sasuke's swords pierced Itachi's heart. Itachi had hoped to pressure Sasuke into releasing Orochimaru so he could be sealed away, but it seems that wasn't going to happen. That was a lingering issue that Sasuke would have to solve himself. As Itachi was lying on the stone ground, Sasuke's sword swinging down to decapitate him, Itachi hoped he'd be up for it. Sasuke didn't pause to observe Itachi's head rolling down the dome ceiling. As soon as he was able, he started limping back towards Hinata. From a distance, she certainly looked dead. Sasuke had seen actual corpses that didn't look as beyond saving as Hinata looked. Blood had pooled in a small circle around her. Her neck was a red mess of blood and gore. Yet Sasuke saw her chest slowly moving up and down with small breaths. Sasuke crouched down next to her. Hinata's eyes focused on him and she managed to smile. Ardent blood was clinging to the corners of her lips and cheek. "Congratulations," she managed to wheeze out. She had mostly managed to fix her windpipe, but her voice still had a wheezing quality to it. "Don't speak. Save your strength." Hinata reached out with her hands, covered in her own blood, stroked his cheek and smiled sadly. "Too late. Lost too much blood, I fear." "No," Sasuke said. As of this moment, he was probably in the top 10 strongest people in the elemental nations. Yet he didn't think he'd ever felt this powerless. "You're going to be fine. You'll be fine. I'll take you far from this place and you'll live a long and happy life. You just have to keep on fighting." "Say it," Hinata whispered. Her vision was growing unfocused from the tears in her eyes due to the pain. "Please." "Say what? What do you need me to say?" "Please," she said again, her voice even fainter. "What does she want me to say?" Sasuke thought frantically. I love you, Hinata." True though he found the words to be, Sasuke instantly regretted saying them, as it seemed as if Hinata had been fighting to stay alive just long enough to hear those words. As soon as the words left his lips, Hinata relaxed, and Sasuke feared she felt content to die at that moment. Sasuke grabbed Hinata's hand and started begging. Not so far away, overlooking the scene, right after Zetsu had given him the cliff notes of the fight, was Obito with his mask on, wondering what to do because he wasn't sure. Really, he should just wait and let the woman die. this was an excellent opportunity to convince Sasuke Uchiha that this world wasn't worth preserving, and work with him to fulfill the Eye of the Moon plan. It would be the only way for him to see his most precious person again. Yet this whole situation felt painfully familiar to him. A newly awakened Mangekyo. That power being useless where it mattered. Powerless to save her. Obito saw himself in Sasuke in that moment, and despite knowing it was the wrong choice considering his ultimate goal, Obito teleported to the scene before Hinata Hyuga expired. Sasuke noticed him but was in no condition to attack him, either physically or emotionally. "What would you give me if I were to save her?" he asked. Sasuke blinked at his serious tone, so different from his earlier persona, but didn't give that part much thought. "Everything," he answered. Under his mask, Obito smiled. "Good answer." He laid a hand on both Hinata and Sasuke and through Kamui, brought them to one of his hideouts. Hinata, who was barely aware of what was happening anymore, was deposited on a soft bed. "Zetsu," Obito called out, and a plant-like creature appeared. "I need you to save this woman's life." The creature moved towards Hinata, far too slowly for Sasuke's liking. "Have no fear, young Sasuke. She will live. I can tell you from personal experience that he has healed worse injuries than this." Sasuke had no choice but to accept that, and with that reassurance came room for more questions. "Why are you doing this?" As far as Sasuke knew, the Akatsuki was a purely evil organization. Many reasons. Itachi and I didn't exactly get along. His plan involved this woman's death, and that alone is reason enough to save her. Who doesn't wish to see their rivals fail now and then? Obito said with a bit of humor in his voice. "Beyond that, I do recall you saying you'd give me everything." While Sasuke considered himself in this man's debt if Hinata lived, he wasn't going to stand by that everything in the most literal sense. He didn't want to be a force for evil. "What do you want?" For now, nothing but an attentive ear and an open mind. "So let's go somewhere else while your friend is recovering. You're going to want to sit down for this. Right after I go retrieve Itachi's head." "You want to mount it on your wall or something?" Obito chuckled. "How little you know. You'll thank me for this later." Konan wasn't in the habit of questioning Nagato's orders, but this one was just a bit strange. Nagato had explained his reasons and Konan had still been baffled. "You don't expect she can succeed, do you?" she had asked. "No," Nagato had said. "She will fail. But all those who seek to save this world through kinder means deserve the chance to try." So here she was, walking brazenly towards where Naruto Uzumaki was said to have set up a base of operations. If it were up to Konan, she'd have tried to disguise herself, but Nagato had forbidden it. "This will be her first test," Nagato had said. "She seeks to make people forget old hatreds and work towards a common goal. A very easy thing to say, but words are wind. She has every reason to distrust and hate you. I wish to see how she'll react. If you are attacked, I trust you'll manage to escape." Konan knew she had been spotted by scouts and so waited patiently until someone made contact with her. When they did, they immediately surrounded her in a wide circle. Konan ignored everyone but Uzumaki, who had shown up personally. "I've come to parley." "I recognize your description," Naruto said. "You are Konan, Jiraiya's old student." "That I am." "Did you kill them? Jiraiya and Tsunade?" Konan gathered chakra in case she needed to flee in a storm of paper before she answers. "Not alone, but yes, I was a part of that." People pulled out weapons, but everyone looked to Naruto to make the first move. She didn't. She glared bloody murder at Konan but didn't attack. Yet. Why should we show you any mercy when you didn't do the same for Jiraiya and Tsunade? They were both good people. If a stone ninja were to infiltrate the Leaf Village and was subsequently discovered, what would his fate be? Regardless if you would attack me, then attack, Konan said with a shrug to indicate she didn't care whether they did or not. I've come to parley, and now you can either accept or refuse. That is all. If he refused, then that should be answer enough for Nagato. Konan could sense the curiosity amidst the hostility from Naruto. You Akatsuki have caused a lot of pain and misery, including to me and mine. I'd be interested to know what it was all for. Accept my offer of parley and you will find out. Konan had been given permission to explain their motivations to Uzumaki. Nagato had mentioned something about the girl having earned the right to know. Why not? Naruto said with a calmness she didn't feel. If I don't like what you have to say, I can always just kill you later. For vengeance? Konan asked. Naruto shook her head. Not vengeance, nor even justice. I have learned that justice and salvation are mutually exclusive concepts. We have chosen to follow the path of saving people instead of avenging them, to serve the living over the dead. If we kill you, it will not be for what you've done in the past, but for the evil you still plan to do in the future. Konan saw how everyone in the clearing hung on to the girl's words. She did have a certain charisma, and Konan understood how she'd gathered such a large following in such a short time. Then I don't think I'll have much to fear. You are one of only 2 Jinchurikis left. Konan saw that Naruto hadn't known that, and the news hit her hard. We only need 2 more deaths. That is far less than what the great villages are seeking to sacrifice for their ambition. Konan gave a slight mocking smile. Since you're not trying to kill the 5 Kage, then why would you seek to kill me? Naruto narrowed her eyes. We shall see, Konan of the Akatsuki. We shall see. Naruto raised her voice to address everyone who had come to surround Konan. The numbers had grown since the conversation started. Back to your duties, all of you. Konan was incredibly amused at the disgruntlement she could sense from everyone. It seems they had hoped they'd continue keeping this talk as an open forum. When they left the clearing, a young woman that Konan recognized as Sakura Haruno also joined them. The poisonous wasp hiding in Uzumaki's shadow. Konan recalled her being described in the Akatsuki meetings. From what Konan could see, as she was escorted, this little settlement looked like a camp that had been thrown together in a hurry. Obviously a sign of an army or organization that had to be constantly on the move. As Konan entered what she assumed to be a sort of office, she saw that there wasn't a lot of paperwork, which was either a sign that they were still very new at this, or Uzumaki was delegating their duty to someone else. I'd offer you some refreshments, but all we've got is boiled water from a nearby river, Naruto said. We have to make do with what we have. And if you do not have enough, you take it from the people you're claiming to protect, Konan asked mildly. Naruto made a pained expression. Many have suggested such, that people should pay for their protection, somehow. So far, we've been able to make do with voluntary donations from both the people as well as the nobility. It is not enough. Not that long ago, I've had to refuse people wishing to join us if they can't bring their own supplies. Hunting and foraging the forests helps, but now we're being accused of poaching. But whatever happens, under no circumstances will I allow us to become some kind of protection racket. We'll disband before that happens. Then you are already better than most, Konan said, softening up for the first time. Often armies rob random villages in order to supply themselves. They like to call it living off the land. Yes, that is one of the things we're trying to force them to stop. I see. Well, make sure that you've got a successor lined up for when we capture you. This idea is a good one, and it does not need to die with you. Sakura looked ready to jump from her chair to attack Conan, but Naruto halted her with a gesture and gave Conan a smile with bared teeth. Keep in mind that I actually want you dead. There are others that I want dead as well, she said, referring to Gaara. But not my anger, nor even past crimes is enough for me to kill. I need to be certain that someone's removal from the world makes it better. So please, Conan, I'm begging you, give me an excuse. Conan knew that Uzumaki could likely best her in a fight, but even still, she wasn't easily intimidated. I am not here to give you an excuse, nor even to justify my actions to you. I am here only to satisfy my leader's curiosity. And what does Madara Uchiha want to know, pray tell? Conan blinked in surprise. You are better informed than I expected, but I am not here on behalf of that man. I know only one master, and his name is Pain. Pain, huh? Jiraiya had explained his history with the Rain Orphans in his last letter, so Naruto could make some guesses. So who is he? Nagato or Yahiko? Conan thought about that question for a moment and eventually answers, yes. Naruto's eyebrows twitched. And your master? Is he just another underling of Madara, or does he actually lead the Akatsuki? Pain is his own master. The man claiming to be Madara advises him, but he doesn't dictate our goals. Conan imagined the masked man might see that differently, but he'd never considered Pain anybody's underling. To be honest, Conan expected that Pain and Madara would come to blows before all was said and done, but that was neither here nor there. But if you are wondering what Pain's curiosity is, I guess he just wants to know what you're capable of. I do recall that you allow anybody from any background to join and leave whenever they wish. This includes rogue ninja, so I shall follow and observe you for a while. Conan smiled wryly. I assure you I can bring my own supplies. Naruto looked at Conan incredulously. No, she said. You say I allow anybody to join, but I'm in charge and I value common sense over a rigid adherence to rules. So unless you can give me something more, you can piss right off. I see. What do you want? For starters, how about those answers you promised me? What is the Akatsuki actually trying to do? Bring peace, Conan said at once. Sakura looked to the heavens in exasperation and Naruto groaned into her hand. Not you too. Let me guess, you're going to conquer the world or otherwise threaten everyone into behaving. Isn't that last part what you're also doing? Threaten everyone into behaving? Conan asked, but got no answer. They wanted some answers before giving more of their own. No, we do not seek to rule. We seek only to unite all the Bijou into one terrifying weapon. A weapon so powerful that any who possesses it will scare all the other powers into submission. A weapon that invalidates the very existence of ninja, as they just be turned to ash when faced with it. The training of children to become weapons of war will be pointless and eventually cease. The brutal turtle wars of the past will be replaced with intrigue to steal the weapon, and at most carefully limited rebellions. So you'll have a single tyrant, is that it? Naruto asked. You'll have a single central absolute power, Conan corrected. A dictator to be certain. Whether that dictatorship is benevolent is something for fate to decide. Wait, you're not planning to take this power for yourself? Naruto asked. Pain claims that none with as much blood on his hand as he should ever be emperor, Conan said sadly. More so's the pity. So it is world domination, yet not for yourself. Out of curiosity, who would gain this weapon? Conan shrugged. It doesn't matter. The daimyo of whatever nation wins the 4th Great Ninja War perhaps, or one of the Kages. It doesn't matter. We think long term. We do not care about the character of the first ruler. Over time, the central government will undoubtedly become corrupt and fall. And then perhaps someone will try to steal the weapon and succeed. Or not. Regardless, only possession of the Bijou weapon will be necessary to rule. So secret battles of intrigue to control it will be the only ones worth fighting. The pain of war will not be eliminated entirely, but it will be reduced to the smallest scale that human nature allows. None of these words were hers. Conan was just echoing Nagato's ideas. Your plan is shit, Naruto said. No wonder that Jiraiya tried to fight you on it. Given that you would need to be sacrificed for the plan to come to fruition, I can understand why you would be skeptical, Conan said. This will not create a perfect world, but there is no such thing. We only seek to break the ninja system and make a world where there will be no more need for war. There is no cost high enough to pay for that. Freedom, justice. We are willing to sacrifice all of these things for a world without war. Peace. We know war. Nothing is more horrible. Not as horrible as it used to be, Sakura said. And Naruto said, even if it is pointless, people will still try to fight your new order. Pain will teach them the error of their ways. Like most animals, a human will eventually learn better if you keep kicking it when it makes a mistake. Naruto looked at Conan with something that approached sympathy. And just how often have you been kicked? Has it made you give up? Conan didn't know how to respond to that, and so kept her face carefully blank. She could see that neither Kunoichi were in any way convinced. That was fine. I never expected to come here to convince anyone. I am here solely at my master's behest. Naruto considered that. You say you do this since you'd pay anything to bring peace, since war is so horrible. But we are trying to change that. At least a little. Your master wants to know whether his plan is still less horrible than the alternative. You are partially correct, Conan said. Pain doesn't think you can succeed. He simply thinks you deserve a chance to try. Naruto chuckled humorously. My old Hokage would like him. That sounded like an insult. You're also caught up in these grand schemes with no care of the pain you cause. The name pain wasn't chosen arbitrarily. Nobody understands it better than he. Conan made a show of looking around. And I think your scheme is plenty grand as well. I've counted at least 30 people, and that's just from what little my eyes have seen. It didn't start like that. There were just the 5 of us, resolving to go where people needed us most, and give whatever aid we could. We wanted to be heroes. But when people saw what we were doing, we've had no shortage of volunteers. If there is one thing I've learned these past few weeks, is that if you give people the chance to do good, most will take it. Conan blinked. I hope you are right. In our experience, the bad always outnumber the good. Naruto took out a map. You say you wish to join us for a while. Very well. I will not turn you aside if you can provide for yourself. You are to go here. And she pointed to a spot on the map. Conan looked at it. Has the war truly reached so far into this country? No. There are a couple of farms out there. They told me that if they've got some extra hands, there will be more food, and that means less people starve. This place is still safe, but many farms and plantations have been abandoned elsewhere. If nothing is done, we'll have trouble come winter. Conan made a face. She didn't consider herself vain, but she could make quick work of most Jonin level opponents. She was being asked to do the equivalent of a D rank. You claim that you and the Akatsuki's goals are ultimately benevolence. Let me assure you that this will help people. So if that is your goal, here's your chance to prove it. With as much grace as she could muster, Conan eventually accepted the assignment. And that's the end of part 37. The story part of it at least. The rest of it is just me ranting about Pain's original plan. For those that forgot, Pain's original plan just stated that they would create a tail beast weapon, give them to the other countries, it would then be used, and the shared pain of that would force the world into short periods of peace. This plan is just dumb. War already causes plenty of pain and nobody has learned anything yet. There are already short periods of pseudo-peace. Because of this, I just have a really hard time taking Pain seriously as a villain. At least in hindsight. Cool in the moment, dumb in hindsight. And I consider Obito a better villain than Pain because of this. In this fanfic, I've had to expand on Pain's plan for it to hold up to even some extremely amateurish scrutiny. This alternate version of Pain's plan was lifted from the fanfic Time Braid, a Groundhog Day sort of fanfic where Sakura is stuck doing the Chunin exams over and over again until she gets it right. So yeah, that's the real end of the chapter. Nikes out.